G'day, mate. Luke Ford here. What's going down? I thought we'd talk about Google's hate speech policies, and got a list of them here, and I just think they're really weak. They're kind of pathetic, and I want to tell you exactly why I think they're so weak. And when you know it, I completely lost my place. But go ahead in the chat. Tell me what you think of Google's hate speech policies. All right. So here are YouTube's latest community guidelines. So I've had 10 videos removed by YouTube, and I should probably just list them out here. Your video has been removed. So let me just do that search. Okay, so my video number 255 with Kevin Michael Grace, Big Business Flack urges de-radicalization for opponent of National Review hack. And this is how your content violated the policy. Content glorifying or inciting violence against another person or group of people is not allowed on YouTube. Right, attacking National Review. That's what I was doing. I was inciting violence. We also don't allow any content that encourages hatred of another person or group of people based on their membership in a protected group. Now, isn't that Orwellian? A protected group? Why are some groups protected? Like a white Christian man, are they protected somehow? I don't think so. So let me just run down all of my videos that have been removed. Okay. My video, JF Garapi's review of Nathan Coffness 2 was flagged for us. Upon review, we've determined it violates our guidelines and we removed it from YouTube. Content glorifying or inciting hatred against another person or group of people is not allowed on YouTube. So you can see this extremely hateful video of mine on my BitChute page. Then my video, The Magic Key, was removed. The magic key was where I talked about some people think there is a magic key for interpreting history. Often it's the wickedness of Jews. That's their magic key. Then Luke Ford discusses race realism, Judaism, and group conflict. I think this was a discussion I had with Robert Stark 5 years ago. That was removed. My video, E. Michael Jones on Big Jews versus Little Jews, was removed. My video, Australia-anity. So that was about the white Australia policy. Australia-anity video was removed. My video, What is Holocaust Denial? And I said explicitly right at the beginning of the video, I hold to conventional historical narratives about the Holocaust. I believe that approximately 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. I was just explaining what Holocaust denial is about. That video got removed from YouTube. And then my video, Luke Ford Talks Why America with host Ryan Landry. So I think you can find the podcast of that where Ryan Landry interviewed me. My video, Does a Jewish Cabal Run America? And my point was no, but that video got removed. So they're just going by titles. It seems like. So pretty ludicrous stuff. No, you haven't had your wrench removed, dual citizen. It's just that you are in my new channel, and that's why not everyone's wrenched as they were in the previous channel. Wow, really great quality, technical quality in my YouTube stream today. That's exciting. Need a stiff drink. Okay, so what are some other points? All right, I want to talk about YouTube's hate speech. Okay, there are protected groups. Okay, these are groups protected by age, caste, disability, ethnicity, gender identity, nationality, race, immigration status, religion, sex and gender, sexual orientation, victims of a major violent event and their kin, and veteran status. We remove content promoting violence or hatred against individuals or groups based on any of the following attributes. Okay, so why do I say these are weasel words? So weasel word is an informal term for words or phrases that are intentionally ambiguous or misleading. Phrases like researchers believe or most people think, which make arguments appear specific or meaningful, but these terms are at best ambiguous and vague. So a classic weasel word is neo-Nazi. Now, there is a specific definition for Nazi. You have to be a German to be a Nazi. A non-German cannot be a Nazi. All right. So any use of Nazi outside of the context of Germany is simply a slur. And the term neo-Nazi doesn't have any meaning. I guess people call Steve Bannon a neo-Nazi. I just watched The Brink, the new documentary about Steve Bannon. So I'm sure a lot of people call Steve Bannon a neo-Nazi, or Breitbart neo-Nazi, or Milo Yiannopoulos neo-Nazi. But the term doesn't really have any meaning. It's just a way to say something that sounds horrible about a person that would cause most people to react by, that's horrible. But it's actually such a flexible term, you can apply it to anyone. So here are 11 weasel word examples and why salespeople shouldn't say them. So, well, when buyers ask you questions, give them straightforward answers. Starting your answer with a word commonly associated with equivocation automatically weakens your answers and makes you sound less sure of yourself. 2, research shows or experts say. Third weasel phrase, I would say that. 4, often. 5, probably or possibly. 6, some or many. 7, could be. 8, the user or the person. 9, leading or cutting edge. 10, that being said. And 11, with all due respect. Yeah, problematic. Yeah, not a fan of the term weasel words. I've heard Tom Wolfe talk about this in one of his interviews with Bill Buckley on Firing Line. I think for his book, Mowing the Flatcatchers, it came out something like 1967. And he talks about weasel words in that interview. I'm pretty sure you can find it on YouTube. All right, let's read more of YouTube's hate speech policy. Okay. Don't post content on YouTube if the purpose of the content is to do one or more of the following: encourage violence against individuals or groups based on any of the attributes above. Right. See, this is what they're doing. They're conflating the mildest noticing of patterns in reality with promoting violence. Notice we remove content promoting violence or hatred. That's such a weasel way of going about things. Now, let's remember here, the YouTube is simply following the Anti-Defamation League's instructions. The Anti-Defamation League gets to decide what is said on social media. A Jewish ethnic pressure group gets to decide what is said on social media around the world. Isn't that wonderful? There could never be any backlash against Jews for that. Thank you, Anti-Defamation League. Great work there, buddy. And the Anti-Defamation League also pretty much gets to decide what policies for payment processors, banks, credit card companies. If the Anti-Defamation League believes that your group should not be allowed to process credit cards, then that payment processing option will be pretty much cut off. So there's no connection between hate speech and violence. All right. So you will find violence that is accompanied by hate speech, but for every instance you find violence accompanied or even preceded by hate speech, you will find 10,000 examples of hate speech without any connection to violence. So the connection between hate speech and violence, it's so thin, so tenuous. You might as well say that people who believe in gravity are promoting violence and hatred. There's just no connection. So plenty of times people will say in real life, I kill you, I want to kill you, you're dead to me. But that doesn't mean that they're going to commit any violent crime. There's just no connection. But the ADL and social media, big tech, and YouTube, they all want to connect it. So they want to connect noticing of patterns in reality. For example, that certain medications work better on white people than black people, or other medications work less well with Asians, or just the effectiveness of various medications, or reading certain blood test results, blood pressure results, and realizing that they may have different meanings for different racial groups. This kind of understanding of patterns in reality, that's what YouTube wants to forbid. And they want to conflate that with promoting violence. See, we remove content promoting violence or hatred. See how they want to conflate that? And there is absolutely no connection. Okay, dehumanizing individuals or groups by calling them subhuman, comparing them to animals, insects, pests, disease, or any other non-human entity. Well, guess what? You will find plenty of sacred texts in Judaism, in Christianity, and in Islam, which refer to outgroups essentially as subhuman. That is the nature of having a strong in-group identity. But YouTube, not as yet, and the Anti-Defamation League, not as yet, would never, ever have the balls to say Judaism is forbidden on our platform, Christianity is forbidden on our platform, Islam is forbidden on their platform. They would never have the balls to do that. Yet all of those religions in their sacred texts contain content that violates YouTube's policies. So if I read the Bible aloud, I am violating YouTube's policies. Now, they probably won't enforce that as yet because of the backlash. They don't have the balls. But if they really believed in their hate speech guidelines, they would say, especially, you cannot read religious texts on YouTube. You cannot discuss certain religious texts. And here they are. They'd have to make a big, long list of forbidden religious texts in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, other religions as well. So let's talk about Deuteronomy 7. When the Lord your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess and drives out before you many nations, the Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, 7 nations larger and stronger than you. When the Lord your God has delivered them over to you and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally. Make no treaty with them and show them no mercy. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons. For they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods, and the Lord's anger will burn against you and will quickly destroy you. This is what you are to do. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their idols in the fire. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the people on earth to be his treasured possession. Okay, so this is in complete contravention of YouTube's hate speech guidelines. Here, God is commanding genocide. And you may say, well, this is from 3,000 years ago. It has no applicability to today. Well, in the Jewish tradition, right up to the present, we often use Amalek, the Amalekites, as our term for people who should disappear from the face of the earth. So the Nazis were referred by Jews as Amalekites. Adolf Hitler was referred to as Amalek. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld claimed that Germans descended from the ancient Amalekites. He was a prominent 19th and early 20th century rabbi. Samuel's word to Agag is, your sword bereaved women, so will your mother be bereaved among women. We were quoted by Israeli President Itzhak Ben Zvi in his handwriting in response to a telegram sent by Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann's wife pleading for clemency. According to the Hebrew Bible, Amalek lived in Canaan. There are many Orthodox Jews who refer to the Palestinians as Amalekites. Certainly beginning in 1974, when Rabbi Moshe ben Zion Ishbazari of Ramat Gan made the association of Palestinians or Amalekites. So this concept of abolish Amalek comes from the Bible, but it's a flexible concept that can be used today. And this certainly violates YouTube's hate speech guidelines. So I'd love to see them have the balls to say you can't read certain biblical passages on YouTube. And Rabbi Yisrael Hess in 1980 published a paper, The Genocide Commandment in the Torah, in which he concluded the day is not far when we shall be called to this holy war, to this commandment of the annihilation of Amalek. Hess's reference to the Amalekites was later taken in Israel to be an allusion to the Palestinian Arabs, especially since he spoke of a jihad. Against this holy war, God declares a counter-jihad to emphasize that this is the background for the annihilation and that it is over this that the war is being waged, that it is not a conflict between two peoples. God is not content that we annihilate Amalek. He also enlists us personally in this war, because as has been said, God has a personal interest in this matter. This is the principal aim. 1982, Rabbi Danny Rubenstein, in his book On the Lord's Side, argued that this notion permeates the Gush Emunim movement bulletins, citing one such article on the right to hate, which affirmed, in every generation there is an Amalek. The Amalekism of our generation finds expression in the deep, arid hatred toward our national revival in our forefathers' land. So yeah, I'm aware of the horrible video quality, and guess what? I don't control it. There are some things in life that you can control, and there are other things in life that you cannot control. Maimonides says, the Turks and the blacks, their nature is like the nature of mute animals. According to my opinion, they are not on the level of human beings. That's Maimonides, widely regarded as the greatest Jewish philosopher. Certainly speech that would be forbidden on YouTube. So let's look more. So there was this Gush Emunim bulletin that said, in every generation there is an Amalek. The Amalekism of our generation finds expression in the deep Arab hatred towards our national revival in our forefathers' land. In 1985, Uriel Tal, in his Foundations of a Political Messianic Trend in Israel, argued that Hess's position is to be contextualized within a totalitarian messianic force, whose process he summed up as follows. Palestinians in the occupied territories were to be reduced to the halakhic status of resident alien, then the promotion of Arab transfer, meaning ethnic cleansing, and the implementation of the commandment of Amalek involving the annihilation of Palestinian Arabs. Ron Gies writes that in settler circles, the Palestinians are likely to be identified with the Amalekites, adding that this message is passed on through the religious schools where boys are taught that the Arab is Amalek. After Baruch Goldstein's massacre of Palestinians at the mosque in Hebron, Rabbi Arthur Waskow argued that Goldstein had decided to blot out the memory of Amalek by machine gunning the Palestinian worshippers, and commented, so then in our generation, for some Jews, the Palestinians become Amalek. Some Palestinians are terrorists. Some Palestinians call publicly for the state of Israel to be shattered. The archetypes of fear slide into place. All Palestinians are Amalek, and the fantasies of the powerless become the actions of the powerful, for in our generation, Jews have power. After the death of Yasser Arafat, a declaration was issued by 200 rabbis of Pikuach Nefesh, asserting that the anniversary of the death of this Amalek of our generation should be celebrated as a day of rejoicing. So Amalek is a pretty flexible term that can be used today, and certainly a term and a concept that is forbidden by YouTube's terms of service, but I don't think they'd ever have the balls to say that Jewish sacred text is not permitted to be shared on YouTube. So yeah, it's not the normal thing for rabbis to call the Arabs or the Palestinians Amalek. I'm just pointing out this term is sufficiently flexible that it's there should should rabbis seek to do that. It's a term that's available, and it would be certainly forbidden by YouTube's terms of service. And but they'd never have the balls to say, we forbid Judaism, we forbid the reading of Christian text or Muslim text. That's my point about how weaselly these YouTube terms of service are. Praise or glorify violence against individuals or groups. Again, that's throughout the Bible. Would YouTube have the balls to say you can't read certain passages from the Bible on the air? Use racial, ethnic, religious, or other slurs where the primary purpose is to promote hatred? Well, in all the sacred texts of in all religions' sacred texts, you will find these type of slurs in places. But YouTube would never have the balls to say, we forbid an authentic expression of Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. But if, say, a white nationalist was to use identical language to what the Bible uses about an outgroup, they would get busted and banned immediately. Use stereotypes that incite or promote hatred based on any of the attributes noted above. So stereotypes, as I think we all know, are usually fairly accurate, generally speaking. So what YouTube wants to ban here is any noticing of patterns, any noticing of groups being different from one another. And they would definitely forbid the speech of Reggie White. He was a star defensive lineman, the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles. And he got in big trouble for a speech in 1998, shortly before he died. So White, after he left the National Football League, he became a Christian minister. And he was invited by state legislators in Tennessee to speak. And he gave an off-the-cuff talk before the state assembly. And he said that homosexuality is one of the biggest sins in the Bible. Sure, that'd be forbidden by YouTube, and that he was offended by gay and lesbian groups that compared their struggle for civil rights to the struggles of African Americans. In the process of history, homosexuals have never been castrated, as enslaved blacks were, Reggie White said. Millions of them never died. Homosexuality is a decision, it's not a race. I'm sure those comments would be forbidden by YouTube's terms of service. In his effort to promote racial harmony, Reggie White, who was black, said each racial and ethnic group has its own gifts that when taken together form a complete image of God, right? But the noticing that different groups have different gifts, this is explicitly forbidden by YouTube's terms of service. And Halsey, I emailed you an invite if you want to come on. In describing those gifts, White said that blacks like to sing and dance, while whites know how to tap into money. Said Hispanic people are gifted at family structure. You can see a Hispanic person, he can put 20 or 30 people in one home. Asians, he said, know how to turn a television into a watch. And American Indians have been very gifted in spirituality. He said that early Americans chose to enslave blacks rather than Indians because Indians knew the territory and knew how to sneak up on people. So this common sense noticing that different people have different gifts is absolutely forbidden by YouTube's terms of service. Reggie White, the great NFL star, great Christian preacher, his sentiments would be forbidden by YouTube's terms of service. And let's not forget the Aleinu prayer. So observant Jews say the Aleinu prayer twice a day. And here is part of that prayer. It is our duty to praise the master of all, to ascribe greatness to the author of creation. It's not made us like the nations of the lands, nor placed us like the families of the earth. It's not made our portion like theirs, nor our destiny like all their multitudes. So that already would probably get in trouble with YouTube. And then it goes on, for they worship vanity and emptiness and pray to a God who cannot save. And in Chabad and other forms of some other forms of Orthodox Judaism, the custom is to spit when you're saying these words about the Goyim, for they worship vanity and emptiness and pray to a God who cannot save. And I'm not embarrassed by this. I expect every in-group to have some negative attitudes about out-groups. But the Aleinu prayer, foundational prayer in Judaism, says the Goyim worship vanity and emptiness and pray to a God who cannot save. And then the custom among some Jewish sects is to spit. So there's this guy, Jay Litvin, who wrote for Chabad. The Aleinu prayer concludes every service, and after we say the first line of this prayer, we spit. This first line, we praise the master of all things that has not made us like the nations of the world, nor caused us to be like the families of the earth, that he has not assigned us a portion like theirs, nor a lot like that of all of their multitudes, for they bow to vanity and nothingness. Okay, and then you spit. But we bend the knee, bow down, and offer praise before the Supreme King of Kings. Now, first, I want to be clear that the bracketed word spit written above is not in the prayer book. I put that in just to show you where we spit. Second, this particular line that he has not has caused a lot of problems throughout the centuries, and in some prayer books, it's taken out so as to not cause trouble with the nations of the world. But even today, there are some Jewish groups that are very upset by this line because they feel it is insulting and discriminatory to other religions and ways of life. So I just want to show how in all traditional, authentic practices of any of the major monotheist religions, they will be violating YouTube's terms of service. I mean, John 8 is hate speech, as Melky points out. So Jesus gets into it with the Pharisees, and he's not very happy. Jesus said, if God were your father, you would love me, for I have come here from God. I have not come on my own. God sent me. Why is my language not clear to you? Because you are unable to hear what I say. You belong to your father, the devil. You want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. So Jesus is saying here to this group of Pharisees, many Christians would say he's saying this to all Jews through the past 2,000 years who've rejected Jesus, that they are of their father, the devil. All right. This would definitely violate YouTube's hate speech policies. So if YouTube was authentic to its hate speech policies, they would have to ban sections of the New Testament, sections of the Old Testament, sections of the Quran, sections of pretty much every sacred book. It has to be banned because of this kind of speech. But YouTube would never have the balls to do that, at least not yet. So they'll simply ban groups that are in disgrace, like white nationalists, from using identical language. How could a religion not be supremacist? It would quickly be abandoned if it wasn't. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, patriotism will be considered hate speech soon. Melky says, hey, YouTube is a private company, though. They should be able to do what they like. And I do think that is an argument. I don't think that's a crazy argument. I think it's a solid argument. And that's why you see my happiness level is not diminished because I've had videos removed from YouTube. Guess what? Even if my main YouTube channel with 12 and a half years of work were removed from YouTube, it would get me down for a day or two. But a few weeks later, my happiness level would not be diminished. So my happiness level does not depend on how YouTube treats me in the private moment. Yeah, it can affect me. I can get annoyed, dispirited, but I don't give YouTube the power over my life and my happiness. Okay, so according to YouTube's hate speech policies, you cannot allege the superiority of a group, right? Jews are God's chosen people. Sounds superior to me. Christians traditionally held that only those in Christ are saved. Sounds superior to me. cannot claim that individuals or groups are physically or mentally inferior, deficient, or diseased based on any of the attributes noted for the purpose of inciting hatred. This includes statements that one group is less than another, calling them less intelligent, less capable, or damaged. So, to have a channel on YouTube, according to these guidelines, you have to lie. You have to become a servant of deceit. You have to deny reality. You have to proclaim ridiculous, stupid things that every group is equally abled. Every group is equally intelligent. Every group has the exact same psychological and physical traits. Conspiracy theories ascribing evil, corrupt, or malicious intent to individuals or groups based on any of the attributes noted above. So there was a completely bankrupt conspiracy theory that was the dominant news story for all the sources of news that YouTube gives credence to and favors in its algorithm. New York Times, Washington Post, NBC News, ABC News, CBS News, CNN. YouTube favors all of these news sources. And for more than 2 years, these news entities were dominated by the false conspiracy theory that President Trump conspired with Russia to fix the 2016 election. It's complete bunk. Yet all of our leading news agencies trafficked in this obviously false, fraudulent conspiracy theory, but YouTube would never ban them for that. Instead, YouTube favors them. YouTube bows down to them. YouTube puts them in the primo position. YouTube says they are the authority on what's going on. All these groups knowingly, consciously conspired and put forward a completely false conspiracy theory that the 2016 elections were stolen by Trump with cooperation from Russia. Okay, examples of hate speech not allowed on YouTube. I'm glad this violent event happened. They got what they deserved. Okay, but again, YouTube's highly selective in how they enforce this. So if I were to say, I am glad World War II happened, the Nazis got what they deserved, that's fine. You can make videos saying you're glad that the Allies won World War II and that the Germans got what they deserved, because the Germans are not a protected group. You can trash Germans all day long on YouTube without any repercussions. Another example of hate speech not allowed on YouTube. Persons with attributes noted above are dogs or like animals. But yet you could say white nationalists are dogs. You could say that Germans in World War II were dogs, and YouTube would be fine with that. Everyone in group with attributes noted above are all criminals and thugs. Well, if you said that about neo-Nazis, Nazis, white nationalists, the alt-right, YouTube would be fine with that. If you said that white nationalists are the scum of the earth, YouTube wouldn't ban you for that. If you said that the alt-right is a disease, YouTube wouldn't ban you for that. If you said that members of the alt-right are less intelligent than us because their brains are smaller, YouTube wouldn't care about that. If you said our existence is threatened by the alt-right, these radical white nationalists and neo-Nazis, so we should drive them out at every chance we get, YouTube wouldn't care about that. YouTube would be just fine with that kind of hate speech. If you said that white nationalists have an agenda to run the world and to get rid of us, YouTube wouldn't discriminate against that. If you said that the alt-right or white nationalism is just a form of mental illness that needs to be cured, YouTube would support that. YouTube would promote that. That's exactly the message that YouTube wants to put out. So these YouTube hate speech guidelines are obviously false and phony. It's all a matter of following the dictates of the ADL so that they can be in good standing with the people who have money, with the corporations that have money. They can promote left-wing politics. They can neutralize any authentic nationalism. And they can do their best to make sure that that Donald Trump doesn't get reelected. So Jewel said, did you know that Mark Field, the suspended Tory MP, was... did I teach him the Alexander technique? I noticed your trademark neck control as he assisted a Greenpeace protester to leave the meeting she was not invited to. Halsey says, look, you have to learn to properly say things like take women's rights away equals bad, but say take women's rights away with sprinkles on top, then that is good. So you can't compare certain people to insects, but can you compare insects to certain peoples? And Canadian Sunset says YouTube is fine with individuals, including moderators, calling for the extermination of Jews, something I viewed earlier this week. And Halsey says Stephen Crowder has an amazing 3-part series right now with a historian about the history of our rights. And the Black Hand notes that streams promoting Jew hatred, blaming Jews for virtually all the wrongs in the world, are not hard to find on YouTube. We'll see how long they're able to stay up, however. Yeah, someone tried to start a competitor to YouTube. The ADL would call it out as a hate platform. That's a great point. Great point. Okay, let me get a break here. Pull up one of my favorite speakers, and so I can catch my breath and catch up on what's going on in the news. Okay, let's get a little Carl Schmitt. Okay, his base lady lesbian professor.
Work out what is the correct rational decision. This is quite different from a democratic idea that the people will derive by their will what's going to go on governmentally. And he says, every actual democracy rests on the principle that not only are equals equal, but unequals will not be treated equally. Okay, that sounds like he's just playing with words there. But the idea for him is that if you've got an ideal of equality, that needs to be a bounded ideal. He doesn't think equality makes any sense except in contrast with inequality. So there are people who will be equal, who participate in the democracy, and then those people will exclude other people who will not be regarded as equal and do not get to participate in the democracy. Democracy is an exclusionary thing. He doesn't actually think liberalism is, and he thinks that's at the heart of the tension between them. He says democracy requires, therefore, first homogeneity, and second, if the need arises, elimination or eradication of heterogeneity. And here, to the glory of our country, he talks quite positively of the White Australia policy as one of the good examples of how a democracy functions. It secures the homogeneity of its population by excluding people who are too different, who are too heterogeneous to participate. And that exclusion for him is the hallmark of a good functioning democracy. Okay, elimination or eradication of heterogeneity if necessary. So he is on board with fascist goals of eradicating heterogeneity. And he links this, and this is the peculiar move, to democracy itself. Okay?
So when Carl Schmitt was developing these thoughts, in the evenings he would patronize prostitutes, and he would go around performing in karaoke bars in Berlin. And he managed to distill his thought on dictatorship, democracy, and political philosophy into a song. It went something like this. Where have all the good men gone? Where are all the gods? Where's the streetwise Hercules to fight the rising odds? Isn't there a white knight upon a fiery steed Late at night, I toss and I turn and I dream of what I need. I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero till the end of the night. He's gotta be strong and he's gotta be fast and he's gotta be fresh from the fight. I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero till the morning light. He's gotta be sure and it's gotta be soon and he's gotta be larger than life. Larger than life. Okay, this is his pre-Hitler phase. This is when he's on his path to the Hitler principle. Sad. Somewhere after midnight, in my wildest fantasy, somewhere just beyond my reach, there's someone reaching back for me. Racing on the thunder, rising with the heat. It's gonna take a Superman to sweep me off my feet. I need a hero. This is Carl Schmitt. Holding out for a hero till the end of the night. He's got to be strong and he's got to be fast and he's got to be fresh from the fight. I need a hero. Holding out for a hero till the morning light. He's got to be sure and it's got to be soon and he's got to be larger than life. I need a hero. Holding out for a hero till the end of the night. Carl Schmitt. This is his political philosophy right here. He distilled it down to a song. All great philosophy can be distilled down to a pop song. And he used to sing this in the karaoke bars in Berlin, 1930, 1931, 1932. Sad. Up where the mountains meet the heavens above, out where the lightning splits the sea, I would swear that there's someone somewhere watching me. Through the wind and the chill and the rain and the storm and the flood, I can feel his approach like the fire in my blood. Carl Schmitt, this whole political philosophy, he boiled it down to a pop song. It's kind of weird carrying a cricket bat in Berlin, but it worked for him. I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero till the end of the night. He's got to be strong and he's got to be fast and he's got to be fresh from the fight. I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero till the morning light. He's got to be sure and it's got to be soon and he's got to be larger than life. Right? That's the whole political philosophy of Carl Schmitt. Yeah, I wonder who's more talented between Duvid and I. Okay, back to the lady professor talking about Carl Schmitt. I'm going to regain my sanity here.
Demonstrates its political power by knowing how to refuse or keep at bay something foreign and unequal that threatens its homogeneity. The question of equality is precisely not one of abstract logical arithmetical games. It is about the substance of equality. Okay, so he's got a critique here, and this kind of critique is made by a lot of people from a lot of different political perspectives. The idea that there's something wrong with liberal notions of formal equality under law, the formal equality under law that could abstractly apply to just anyone. And you will have people from all different political directions saying we need a concept of substantive equality. People can have formal legal rights and still not really be able to do anything with this right because they're very poor, they're disadvantaged by some form of discrimination or something like that. Schmitt is also saying you need a substantive equality, but he thinks you're only ever going to get substantive equality if you secure an extremely homogeneous population. Okay, so you need to eradicate or exclude difference rather than a critique of formal notions of equality that says that you need some way of having substantive equality in diversity and difference. Schmitt doesn't think that's a realistic proposition. He says a risk of inequality is always present.
Okay, the chat says I never talk about being American. That's because America's turned so gay. It's kind of a little embarrassing to be an American right now. I mean, we have Gay Pride Month. We don't just have same-sex marriage. We have a whole month of gay pride, and it's the holiest month of the year. I'm a little embarrassed to call myself an American in that context. It's kind of hard to get excited about this country with that much degeneracy. Okay, so I'm going to go on The Voice and Dancing with the Stars soon, and I think I just need a little bit more practice. I will get it down. Okay, let's talk about Professor George Hawley's 2018 song, book, The Alt-Right, whatever you want needs to know. Bernard says, name one Western country that does not have gay marriage. Israel? Is there a Western country that doesn't have gay marriage? Okay. Talking about the militia movement. The militia movement's growth came to a dramatic end in 1995 when Timothy McVeigh blew up a federal building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people. McVeigh had ties to militia groups, and he claimed that his actions were a response to Ruby Ridge and Waco. The bombing was a devastating blow to the government. Whatever goodwill it had earned because of recent government overreach immediately collapsed, referring to the militia movement. Many organizations simply disbanded. So, Italy doesn't have gay marriage. That's good to know. Okay, back to the lady professor on Carl Schmitt, Chile.
That he thinks it is bound together with the meaning of equality itself. The term equality wouldn't make any sense unless you had a notion of inequality. He says a democracy, because inequality always belongs to equality, can exclude one part of those governed without ceasing to be a democracy. Until now, people who in some way were completely, partially without rights, and who were restricted from the exercise of political power, let be called barbarians, uncivilized, atheists, aristocrats, counter-revolutionaries, or even slaves, had belonged to a democracy. Okay, again, democracy.
So on my voice lesson this week, I told my teacher I want to work on reading aloud. I do a lot of reading aloud on my show. She said, "Why? That's boring to watch." But I said, I want to work on it. So she said, okay. So I just picked up this book that I carry around with me, Earn What You Deserve, How to Stop Under-Earning and Start Thriving by Gerald Mundus, author of the best-selling How to Get Out of Debt, Stay Out of Debt, and Live Prosperously. So I just picked up this book and wanted to show her my dramatic reading techniques. And she wasn't impressed. She thought most of what I was doing was shtick. And so my voice teacher encouraged me to just choose one line, highlight it ahead of time, and then speak from the heart. And I said, no way, that's way too scary. It's much easier and safer to just read from a book. And she said, what are you afraid of? You already say the most horrible things. I mean, you already say all these racist, homophobic, bigoted things. There's no way that your truth can be any worse than than the things that you say normally. And I thought that was a pretty good point. But anyway, let me give you guys an exercise. I'm going to give you guys a meditation, right? Everyone came into this stream to do a prosperity meditation, or I can sing more songs. So press 1 for prosperity meditation, press 2 for Luke to sing more pop songs. Luke's truth is bold and beautiful, just like the women that I adore. This is a specific meditation that can help you achieve balance and proportion while freeing you from under-earning. It can help you see the many aspects of your life and self in tranquil perspective. You won't hurt yourself by doing this. Oh man, everyone wants me to... Okay, it's press 1 for the prosperity meditation. Press 2 is for Luke to sing more pop songs. Press 3, you want me to read from my masturbation diary. Okay, if you do choose to work with this meditation, it's best to wait until you're experienced with other, more basic forms of meditation. When you do begin, practice it lightly at first for only 3 or 4 minutes. Since doing this exercise may challenge an identity you have long believed in, particularly if focused on too intently or sustained too long by a novice, it can cause psychological or emotional discomfort. Okay. Should that occur, simply discontinue the meditation. All right. Are you guys ready to get psychologically discomforted? Press 5 in the chat if you're ready to get psychologically discomforted. Okay. Let your mind become quiet. Then best you can place your consciousness deep within your diaphragm, the calm and quiet center of your being. Now ask yourself silently, who am I? Okay. Who am I? So press 1 if you primarily identify with your nationalism. Press 2 if you primarily identify with your race. Press 3 if you primarily identify with your religion. Press 4 if you primarily identify with your town. Press 5 if you primarily identify with your country. Press 6 if you primarily identify with your state. Press 7 if you primarily identify with your profession. Press 8 if you primarily identify with your hobby. Press 9 if you primarily identify with being a spouse. Press 10 if you primarily identify with being a parent. Press 11 if you primarily identify as being a child. Press 12 if you primarily identify as a felon. Okay, so who am I? So my initial response is, I'm Luke. I'm Luke Ford. And but that's just a name that I give myself. So who am I? I'm an American, but America's so gay right now. I don't really want to identify with America. So who am I? Orthodox Jew. And that is a favorite identity for me because it's very clear. I then know who I am. My life is kind of laid out for me. There aren't as many choices. I've got very clear direction, got very clear community to identify with, got a way of life. I've got sacred text. So Orthodox Jew, that feels really comfortable. But let's keep pushing. I could say identify as a YouTuber. I can say I identify as an Alexander Technique teacher, but these are only segments of my life. I identify as a writer. So that's probably my favorite identity, along with Orthodox Jew and writer. So write in the chat how you primarily identify. And then I have to think about the 6 years of my life where I was basically bedridden, not able to do much. And I might get out of bed, walk across the street to the park, and just sit in the park and watch life go by. I'd watch the river flow by. I'd watch people rowing their canoes by in the river. I'd watch tour boats go by on the Brisbane River. I'd watch people jog by. I'd watch people playing games in the park. I'd watch parents bring their kids into the park. I'd watch people doing their morning exercise. And I'd just kind of sit there on the park bench and I'd watch life go by. And I'd occasionally hear from my friends, and my friends were moving ahead with their lives. They were finishing their education. They were moving into their chosen professions. They were getting married. They were having kids, and life was just passing by. And I was someone who was alive. I was able to see life go by. I was able to hear things. I was able to listen to classical music. I was able to read for up to about an hour a day before the headaches overtook me. And so, of course, everything that I am could be taken away. I mean, theoretically, I could be thrown out of every Orthodox synagogue in Los Angeles, or I could lose my American citizenship, I guess, theoretically, for some reason, or I could lose my ability to speak. I could lose my ability to have consciousness. I could lose my ability to walk, right? So then who am I? I guess I am a human being. I'm alive, and right now I have the ability to see what's going on, to hear what's going on, and to participate in life. Anyway, it's an interesting exercise to just kind of cycle through all of your identities. And so you might say your name first, but that's just the name people call you. That is not you. Who is the I who is called by that name? Then you might think occupation, a writer. No, writing is something I do. That is not me. Who is the I who does the writing? My thoughts. No, these are a function of my consciousness. They are not me. Who is the I who has these thoughts? A man. No, that is the sex of my body. That is not me. Who is the I who has this sex? My body. Well, that is something I inhabit. That is not me. Who is the I that inhabits this body? Fear. No, that's just an emotion that I fear and feel. That is not me. Who is the I who feels this emotion? My books. No, those are just things that I created. They are not me. Who is the I who created the books? I'm me. Well, that's just a way I perceive myself. That is not me. Who is the I who perceives itself? Rage. No, that's just an emotion I feel. That is not me. Who is the I who feels this emotion? Peace, bliss, God. No, that's just a concept I have. That's not me. Who is the I who has this concept? History. No, that's just a branch of study that I know of. That's not me. Who is the I who knows of this branch of study? Inquiry. No, that is just questioning I do. That is not me. Who is the I who does this questioning? So that's what the process looks like. And as you do it, don't simply free associate from one answer to the next. Actively look for an answer. Who am I? Respond to each answer as in the example above. And the sense of completion should come over you at any moment while you're in the process. Rest in that sense for several minutes and end the meditation. Trust your own intuition as to how best to proceed, but it's a way of exploring your own identity and perhaps getting in touch with parts of you that can earn more money. So, excellent exercise from Earn What You Deserve, How to Stop Under-Earning and Start Thriving. Okay, I'll go back to George Hawley's book in a minute, but first this lesbian lady professor from Australia on Carl Schmitt on the contradiction between parliamentarianism and democracy.
A number of government systems that have functioned as democracies of the citizens, democracies of a particular elite population. But within the geographic territories of those democracies have been all sorts of populations that were unfree in various ways, or at least didn't have full political rights. And he's suggesting that this isn't just an incidental feature of democracy, it is a defining characteristic of it, that it has these excluded populations. And then he draws on the example from the British Empire and the fact that the empire rules over a large number of colonies but doesn't offer citizenship to the people in those colonies. He says, does the British Empire rest on universal and equal voting rights for all its inhabitants? It could not survive for a week on this foundation. With their terrible majority, the coloreds would dominate the whites. In spite of that, the British Empire is a democracy. Okay, this is a fear that is very common at this time. We've gone through several waves of it across the 19th century. Every time the franchise is expanded, there's always this terror that the majority will take it out on the...
Okay, a lecture there on Carl Schmitt. And let's go back to Professor George Hawley. In subsequent year, militia groups endorsing similar ideologies to Timothy McVeigh emerged. Many of these newer groups, such as the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters, have emphasized they are not motivated by racism or anti-Semitism. The alt-right has shown little interest in the militia movement, though there have been some connections. Several militia groups were present at the Unite the Right rally. These groups wore military-style uniforms and carried weapons at the event. They all claimed that they had attended to support the First Amendment rights of the rallygoers rather than to express support for the rally's message. For a better understanding of the militia movement, I recommend To Shake Their Guns in the Tyrant's Face by Robert Churchill and the book American Extremism by Darren Malloy. I don't know Morgoth, so maybe I should have him on. Thanks for the tip. What does 1488 mean? White nationalists have used the term 1488 for decades. It's also been embraced by much of the alt-right, though some seem to use it as an inside joke rather than a call to arms. Often appears in Twitter and on white nationalist message boards. These numbers represent a combination of two white nationalist slogans. The 14 represents the 14 words first coined by David Lane. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. This slogan was embraced by the white nationalist movement and is commonly expressed by the contemporary alt-right. The 88 is a code for Heil Hitler, as H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. Among white nationalists on the internet, 1488 may be the most popular slogan. David Lane was part of the order. He killed someone, I think a bank guard, when they were robbing a bank truck, and he was a murderer and spent the rest of his life in prison. What is the National Socialist Movement? After the American Nazi Party collapsed, its former members created multiple groups. Most famous and influential was William Pierce's National Alliance, but the NSM is another such group. The NSM was founded in 1974. That time was called the National Socialist American Workers' Freedom Movement. Did not adopt the shorter name until 1994, when a neo-Nazi named Jeff Shep took over the organization. Like many other contemporary white nationalist groups, the NSM openly adopted Nazi symbols. Public events, its members have historically worn Nazi uniforms and swastika armbands. The group enjoyed a period of robust growth in the early 2000s, when competing organizations like Aryan Nations, the Church of the Creator, and the National Alliance collapsed. As recently as 2011, it was described by the New York Times as the largest supremacist group. Chat says that Jeff Shep, its leader, has non-white kids. Apparently, it had hundreds of members. The NSM website says that it's groups in dozens of US states and multiple countries overseas. The true size of the NSM at any given time is difficult to estimate with confidence, however. It's worth noting that it has never staged a public event in which hundreds of members appeared. The NSM is best known for its public demonstrations. Although it has not altered its message, the group attempted to rebrand itself in 2016 by ceasing to use swastikas. Since that time, it has increasingly cooperated with other groups, notably the Traditionalist Worker Party and other groups associated with the new confederation of organizations called the Nationalist Front. The NSM was present at several significant white nationalist rallies in recent years, such as a White Lives Matter rally in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Okay, what is the Christian identity movement? The Christian identity movement was once a popular religion among racists in the United States. The religion maintained many unusual theological stances. Most notably, it sought to reinterpret the Bible in such a way that white Europeans, rather than the Jews, represented the true chosen people. The religion's roots can be traced to 19th century Britain, where a small number of people argued that modern Europeans were direct descendants of the ancient Israelites described in the Old Testament, a movement called British Israelism. This belief never gained more than a small number of adherents at the time. The original proponents of the idea were not apparently motivated by racial, ethnic, or religious animus. In the United States in the 20th century, these religious ideas were used to justify pre-existing anti-Semitism. Not sure I've ever met anyone in the Christian identity movement. Those who embraced these views concluded that Jews were a cursed race, that non-whites more generally possessed no souls. No mainstream Christian denomination has ever endorsed these theological positions, and few Christians have embraced them. Nevertheless, these ideas gained a large amount of attention after they were adopted by prominent American racists. Richard Butler of Aryan Nations, for example, preached Christian identity ideas, and George Lincoln Rockwell of the American Nazi Party also endorsed Christian identity. Then I count as one of those Brit Israelites. Christian identity has experienced a steep decline in recent decades. During the 1990s, it was an important faction within the broader white nationalist movement. Today, it has very little influence. Within the alt-right, there are numerous people who identify as Christians, but few who embrace the Christian identity theology. The most popular alt-right websites rarely mention Christian identity. For a useful introduction to the Christian identity movement's history, I recommend Michael Barkun's book, Religion and the Racist Right, The Origins of the Christian Identity Movement. Let's go back to our lady professor from Australia talking about Carl Schmitt.
So there's a fight against extending the franchise. Schmitt just takes for granted that it would be insane to try to include people. You hang on to your small, narrow set of population that is included in your democracy, and it's fine for that small, narrow minority to rule over everybody else that falls within their territory. He is fully comfortable with this as an idea. And he talks about the issue of suffrage and equal rights and what this can and can't mean. He says, again, substantive equality is based in homogeneity. So where you've got a fairly homogeneous population, universal suffrage is reasonable. And of course, they're all very similar, they're all alike. Of course, all of them should participate in vote, if you have a vote. And we'll see in a bit that he doesn't think democracies require a vote. He says the current discourse of universal suffrage implies something very different from this, and he thinks it's therefore problematic. He says that it implies that every adult person, simply as a person, should be eo ipso politically equal to every other person. This is a liberal, not a democratic idea. It replaces formerly existing democracies based on substantial equality and homogeneity with a...
Jones Very writes on Twitter, he's trying to get around YouTube's terms of service. He says, what about a phrase like termites are like Jews? Does this evade the terms of service? Because technically I'm not dehumanizing Jews, I am humanizing termites. And how do you guys like my new kippah? Got it at a bar mitzvah this past Shabbos. What was Aryan Nations? At the peak of its influence, Aryan Nations was among the more significant hate groups in the United States. Richard Butler founded the group in the 1970s. Butler, a former aeronautical engineer and inventor, hoped that the Pacific Northwest could one day become a white homeland, and he built a compound for the organization in Idaho near the tourist city of Coeur d'Alene. Like many white supremacist leaders of this period, Butler followed the Christian identity movement. The Aryan Nations compound eventually became a gathering place for white supremacists. Butler held regular meetings that he called the Aryan Nations World Congress. Compound also hosted annual skinhead gatherings. Butler and Aryan Nations were often closely connected with violent extremism. Robert Matthews and other members of the order had connections with Aryan Nations. The order gave some of the money that it stole during its crime spree to Butler. Law enforcement could not prove that Butler knew the money was obtained illegally. Aryan Nations did not limit its activities to its own compounds, hosting parades and flyer campaigns throughout the community. Other locals objected to this, and they did not want their region to develop a reputation as a haven for white supremacists. They could do little about it without violating the group's First Amendment rights. And Psych knows there's another ethnic world congress that gets better press. Yeah, I wonder why this other congress gets better press. Lawsuit. Lawfare brought down Aryan Nations in 2000 after Aryan Nations members assaulted two people outside the compound. The Southern Poverty Law Center filed a lawsuit on the victims' behalf. To pay the multi-million-dollar judgment that resulted, Aryan Nations was forced to sell its property. Butler died in 2004. The organization split apart shortly thereafter. None of its offshoots have attained a similar level of national prominence, however. Contemporary alt-right material rarely references Butler or Aryan Nations, nor have any significant figures within the alt-right thus far followed the compound model of organizing, though the Traditionalist Workers' Party apparently owned property where multiple members resided. Yeah, and a trailer park, right? Where Matthew Heimbach was carrying on an affair with his father-in-law's wife. However, Butler's ideas about the Pacific Northwest as the ideal place for a new white homeland are still promoted by some white nationalists. Okay, what is the Northwest Front? Northwest Front wants to create a new white nation in the Pacific Northwest, hoping to spark a racist separatist movement in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and western Montana. Richard Butler of Aryan Nations is best known for popularizing the idea, though he was inspired by a former KKK leader named Robert Miles. Harold Covington, the late Harold Covington, who would not give me an interview because I had interviewed Greg Johnson, who has been involved with white nationalist causes since the early 1970s, is now the person most associated with this idea. Covington has a long history of feuding with other white nationalists, such as Ben Klassen and William Pierce, for example, disparaged him. Harold Covington was always trashing Richard Spencer as well. Like Piers, Covington has laid out his vision in a series of novels. He has written 4 novels explaining how a guerrilla war by white nationalists could cause racial minorities in the US federal government to flee the region. He argues that a persistent violent campaign using tactics developed by the Irish Republican Army to fight British control of Northern Ireland could eventually make it impossible to govern the region. As was the case with Piers, Covington insists that his works of fiction are not intended to inspire any acts of real-world violence. Covington was one of the few people explicitly named in Dylann Roof's manifesto, came to light at the time of his murderous rampage in Charleston, South Carolina. For now, however, Covington's main activism is focused on encouraging white nationalists to move to the Northwest and form communities of like-minded people. Yeah, they must have named the Covington Catholic School after Harold Covington. Covington continues to fight with other white nationalists and contemporary alt-right platforms, only infrequently cite Covington as a model. The idea that some portion of the United States should be carved out as a homeland for whites has been a common theme in white nationalist literature. However, yeah, Jared Taylor spoke about that in his interview with Fareed Zakaria on CNN. Jared said that whites need their own homeland. They need some space within the United States. So I don't think it's a particularly effective strategy. I think Jared was on firmer ground when he didn't talk that way, but just rather talked about how whites, like all other groups, have interests. And he certainly was never one to focus on hating out groups. Jared's always been quite gentlemanly in his demeanor. Tom Metzger has drawn a similar, though larger map of what he calls the white American bastion. Contemporary Southern nationalists would like to see the original Confederate States of America recreated. Okay, what is the Church of the Creator? Sounds pretty godly, right? The Church of the Creator, also known as the Creativity Movement, is a religious group created by Ben Klassen in 1973, though we must apply the term religion somewhat loosely in this context. Klassen and his followers did not believe in anything supernatural. In fact, they rejected all religious claims about gods and the afterlife, said they wanted whites to pursue the improvement and expansion of their race with the zeal of religious fanatics. Before turning all his attention to racist activism, Klassen was involved in conventional politics. He was a member of the John Birch Society and briefly served as a representative in the Florida legislature. So I do notice quite a bunch of intermixing between the John Birch Society and the dissident right. Klassen rejected all religions, but he despised Christianity in particular because of its effects on the white race. He argued that Christianity was actually a Jewish conspiracy designed to enslave whites, that its maxims about forgiveness and celebrations of weakness were detrimental to whites. His contempt for Christianity was so strong, he even rejected the racialized versions of Christianity that were popular among some white nationalists during his time. He had no patience with the Christian identity movement. In place of Christianity, Klassen wanted a religion built explicitly and entirely around race, devoid of any references to the supernatural. He wrote 3 holy books that would serve as the foundation for creativity: Nature's Eternal Religion, The White Man's Bible, and Salubrious Living. Anyone read any of these books? Though Klassen did not believe in any supernatural intelligence, he argued that nature provided certain lessons that humankind must absorb in order to thrive. So it seems like he had a worldview very similar to Hitler. These ideas were intuitive to Klassen, but he felt that Christianity and liberal ideologies had blinded whites to their truth. According to Klassen, every species and subspecies has a natural drive to strengthen itself and expand as widely as possible. He thus made this the central aim of his religion. In fact, the religion holds that anything that benefits the white race represents the highest good. Klassen gave himself the title Pontifex Maximus. He had great aspirations for his organization, hoped that his compound would eventually be a training ground for the next generation of white nationalists. Wanted to create a school for gifted boys, where young boys would be indoctrinated into his belief system and prepared for a lifetime of activism and leadership. Creativity enjoyed meaningful growth during the 1980s, but like other racist organizations of that period, it was hamstrung by its own violence. Creativity leader was convicted of murdering an African-American man in 1991, and Church of the Creator was eventually forced to pay a $1 million settlement to the victim's family. 1993, law enforcement thwarted several violent plots by Creativity followers. Klassen killed himself that same year. Creativity enjoyed a resurgence in influence and popularity when Matthew Hale took over the organization in 1995. He also claimed the title of Pontifex Maximus. At least he didn't call himself Biggest Dickus. Within a few years, Hale had organized dozens of new chapters across the United States. He made regular appearances in the popular media and was considered one of the more important racist leaders in the country. By the early 2000s, however, the Creativity movement began to collapse again. Hale was convicted of attempting to solicit the murder of a judge in 2004 and remains in prison for that crime. The Creativity movement still exists and has active chapters in several states, but it is not one of the more significant groups in contemporary white nationalism, and it is rarely referenced in alt-right material. So I want to talk about that new Steve Bannon documentary, The Brink. So I want to play some excerpts, and to do that, I need to stream on my other channel, my main channel. So I'll be back in 5 minutes.